the warning came too late. Earth's satellite defenses blinked out in silence. By the time the control centers noticed, the skies had turned black with ships, alien ships. No one had expected the Varkari to return, not after the peace treaty was signed 2 decades ago. Sergeant Kale was the first to hear the signal. It was not a message but a sound, low and trembling, like the hum of a forgotten machine waking up. When he rushed to the outpost, the radar screen was glowing red. They were surrounded from orbit to ocean. He ran to the barracks. Soldiers were still eating breakfast, unaware of the war about to crash down. Kyle didn't shout. He simply pointed to the sky. A blast shook the ground seconds later. Plates fell. Screams followed. The air burned with fire as the first plasma bombs landed. Earth's defenses were too slow, too old. Fighters scrambled, but they were shot down one by one. Kale's squad suited up without questions. They had trained for peace. Now they would fight for survival. In the chaos, one enemy dropped into their sector. She wasn't like the others. She had blue skin, silver eyes, and a sword instead of a blaster. Kale saw her cut through 2 soldiers before she turned and locked eyes with him. He raised his rifle. She tilted her head. She looked curious, not afraid. That moment of pause cost him. Her sword flashed once, and pain spread across his chest. Darkness took him before he hit the ground, but Kale did not die. He woke up 3 hours later in the med bay, patched up by emergency nanobots. His armor, cracked and melted, still glowed faintly. He stood up, confused and shaken. The nurse stared at him like she had seen a ghost. "You shouldn't be alive," she whispered. "That blade, it disintegrates the nervous system. No one survives that wound." Kyle didn't answer. He just grabbed a new weapon and walked out into the smoke. He saw her again 2 days later. The blue-skinned warrior. She stood on a pile of rubble watching him. Her sword was still wet with someone else's blood. When she saw him, her expression changed. Confusion, then recognition, then something like fear. They fought again. This time Kale was ready. He moved faster, smarter. She still cut deep into his side, but he managed to shoot her shoulder before collapsing. Once more, he woke up in the med bay. Once more, the nurse stared with wide eyes. Kale didn't sleep after that. He started keeping track. First time, chest. Second time, side. Third time, neck. Each time he should have died. Each time he returned. And each time she was there waiting. On the 10th time, they met in silence. The city burned around them. Ash fell like snow. Kale's armor was scorched black, held together with wires and luck. Her face was bruised, her sword chipped. They were both tired. But she stepped forward, lifting her blade again. Kyle raised his weapon but didn't fire. Instead, he took off his helmet. She lowered her sword slowly. Her voice, when she spoke, was not filled with rage. It was filled with something colder, something heavier. "You died 10 times by my blade," she whispered. "So tell me, what kind of armor brings the dead back?" Kale didn't answer her question. He just stood still, watching her as the wind carried ash between them. His hands were loose at his sides, not reaching for his weapon. For the first time, they didn't fight. The blue-skinned warrior narrowed her eyes. Her name was Sira of the Mom, Janari. She was trained from birth to fight humans, but the man in front of her, the one she had killed 10 times, was still standing. She could not understand how. Around them, the ruined city groaned under the weight of smoke and fire. Buildings leaned like broken statues. The ground was black with ash and shattered glass. Neither of them moved through the wreckage. They stood, face to face like statues carved in war. Sira tightened her grip on the sword. She had been told that her blade left no survivors. The edge of Janari steel was made to end life instantly. Yet here he was, his armor dented, his eyes alive. She had to know the truth. "You are not a ghost," she said slowly. "You are not a clone. And I know you are not a machine. So how do you return?" Kyle's face didn't change. But deep inside, he was wondering the same thing. Each time he died, he felt it, the pain. the darkness, the nothingness. And each time, he came back. The same memories. The same scars. It wasn't resurrection. It was something stranger. Like the armor itself was pulling him back from death. He had found the armor during a routine salvage mission on Titan's forgotten moons. It was buried in the ground, humming faintly. No symbols, no code, just black metal and a single phrase etched inside the chest plate. Return until the war is done. Kyle never told anyone. He thought it was just old tech. Now he wasn't sure. Maybe it was cursed, or maybe it had a purpose, a mission. Every time he woke up, his body burned less. The wounds healed faster. His reflexes grew sharper. Sierra slowly stepped forward. Her blade stayed down. She didn't want to fight this time. Her eyes searched his face as if she could read his soul. She was not just a warrior. She was a commander, a tactician. And now she was confused. Are you human? She asked quietly. Kale gave a small nod. That answer shook her more than any weapon. The stories of humans were clear, weak, breakable, temporary. But this one stood like stone in a storm. A rumble shook the ground near them. Something exploded in the distance. Both turned their heads. The war hadn't stopped. Just this moment. Just this silence. Kale looked back at her. He didn't raise his weapon. He didn't speak. He just waited. Sierra exhaled and lowered her sword. You're not supposed to exist, she said. Not like this. My people will never believe me. They will come again, stronger, angrier, and they will try to erase you. Kyle nodded again. He already knew it. He had seen the ships above. He had fought wave after wave, but he would stand again, and again, until there was nothing left to stand for, or until the armor failed him. For the first time, her voice softened. She looked not like a killer, but like a woman tired of war. If I spare you now, what will you do? She asked. Kale looked up at the smoke-covered sky and gave the only answer he knew. I'll keep getting up. Sierra turned her back to him for the first time. She did not look over her shoulder. She simply walked into the smoke and vanished behind the ruins. Kyle stood still, his armor humming quietly as the fires crackled around him. He should have felt relieved, but all he felt was confusion. The war was still going on. He could hear the distant thunder of weapons. He could see gunfire lighting the dark sky, but for now he let the silence stay. Kale moved slowly toward the remains of a fallen structure. There had once been a school here. Now it was rubble and fire. He walked past burned walls, scattered books, and twisted metal. The smell of ash clung to everything. He found a small child hiding behind a broken desk. The boy looked up at him with wide eyes. Kale knelt down, removed his helmet, and reached out a hand. The boy didn't speak. He just took the hand and followed. Kale carried the boy through the wreckage, avoiding enemy patrols and falling debris. The child clung to his armor, not asking questions. Maybe he already knew there were no answers. Maybe he just knew this soldier wouldn't let him die. At the edge of the district, Kyle found a medic camp. Tents flapped in the wind. Wounded lay, in rows, some quiet, others screaming. Kale handed the boy to a nurse and stepped back as the child disappeared into the white tent. He didn't stay. There was no rest for him. No peace. The armor wouldn't allow it. His wounds closed too fast. His blood kept running warm. Even when his bones cracked, they reset in hours. He was meant to keep moving. Kale walked back into the ruins. The smoke thickened as he climbed a broken stairwell leading to the top of a collapsed tower. From there, he could see the sky. Ships hovered like silent vultures above the city. He spotted Sierra again. She stood on the roof of another building far across the ruins. She wasn't holding her sword. She wasn't moving, just watching, like she was trying to understand something she couldn't explain. Kale didn't wave. He didn't call out. He just stood there, two figures separated by distance and war. For now, that was enough. She turned and vanished again, and Cale stepped down into the shadows below. Later that night, Cale returned to the command post. His captain was dead. The officers were gone. What remained was a tired group of survivors. They looked at him like he was a legend, not a man. None of them asked how he kept coming back. He didn't give them speeches. He only gave them orders. Move here. Fortify that point. Watch the skies. He fought beside them without sleep. His armor glowed faintly in the dark, like a reminder of something ancient and forgotten. That same night, a scout drone sent back a signal. A new fleet was arriving. Bigger, heavier. The Varkari were bringing siege ships, the kind that cracked mountains, the kind that erased cities. Cale looked at the blinking map. He circled a spot near the river. "We make our stand here," he said. No one questioned him. They moved with silent trust, following the man who should not be alive. And across the battlefield, Sira received her new orders. She was told the human target had survived again. She was told to end him, not with honor, not with a duel, with fire from the sky. But she hesitated. Sira sat inside her drop pod as it prepared to launch. The lights inside flickered red while her fingers tightened around the strap across her chest. Her orders were clear. No sword, no duel, just airstrike from above. But her mind was not clear. It kept returning to the image of Cale standing under the burning sky. No weapon in hand, no fear in his eyes. He had looked at her like she was more than just an enemy. She had fought many humans before. None of them returned from her blade. None of them stood twice. And this one had stood 10 times. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. The pod shook as it launched into the upper atmosphere. Around her, dozens of other pods followed the same path. They would release fire, not soldiers. The sky would rain destruction. Her target would be at the center. Cale stood by the river as the last. Defenses were being placed. Metal barriers lined the edge. Heavy cannons faced the open valley. Civilians had already been evacuated. This was not about saving lives anymore. This was about holding ground. His second in command, a young woman named Ray, walked beside him. She didn't ask questions about his past. She had seen him bleed. She had seen him rise. To her, that was enough. "Do we have a chance?" she asked. Kyle looked at the horizon. He didn't smile. He didn't lie. He only gave her the truth. If we hold them long enough, someone else might win this war. The sky began to tremble. The incoming fleet had arrived. Ships covered the clouds like a second ceiling. Heat spread across the field as the air filled with the sound of descending fire. Cale didn't flinch. He activated his armor's shield module and shouted commands to the soldiers. He wasn't just standing anymore, he was leading. Missiles dropped like burning arrows. Explosions tore through bunkers and walls. Screams mixed with fire. Dust swallowed the air. Still, Cale moved forward. Sira's pod landed behind enemy lines. She stepped out into the chaos with her sword still sheathed. She saw Cale through the smoke. His armor was cracked. Blood ran down his leg, but he stood in the center like a pillar of stone. Her communicator buzzed. "Target not confirmed dead. Proceed with second wave." She stared at the device in her hand. Then she crushed it. She ran toward him. Not to kill. Not yet. She needed to see him up close. She needed to understand why the dead man kept walking. Cale turned as she approached. Soldiers around him raised their rifles. He lifted a hand and they held fire. He knew this was no ordinary enemy. This was something else. Sira stopped 3 feet from him. "Why are you still alive?" she asked. Her voice was low, tired, strained. Kyle didn't answer right away. His chest rose and fell. His breath steamed in the cold air. Then he spoke. "I don't know, but I'm starting to believe I'm not allowed to die until this ends." She didn't swing her blade. He didn't raise his gun. They just stared at each other as fire rained around them. In that moment, the war paused. The heat of battle roared behind them, but Kyle and Sierra stood in stillness. Neither raised their weapons. The war howled around them, but between the two, there was only silence. Kale's armor sparked along the edges. A deep crack split his shoulder plate. Blood had dried over the metal. He looked more like a ghost than a man, but his eyes were calm. Sierra's blade remained sheathed. Her orders pressed in her mind like a weight, but her instincts fought back. This was not a normal soldier. This was something beyond her training. "You should be dead," she said again. "My sword is designed to erase, not injure. I broke you 10 times. But you returned each time." Kale gave a short nod. He had stopped trying to explain it. The armor had fused to his nerves. It had changed him. Each death made him less human, but somehow more alive. "They built this suit for war," he said. "But I think it became something else. It doesn't let me go. It pulls me back. Maybe it wants something finished." Sierra stepped closer. The smoke around them thickened, but neither moved away. "What if the armor is using you?" she asked. "What if it's feeding on your will?" Kyle didn't argue. He had thought of that many times, but he also knew he couldn't stop. Not yet. Something in the air told him the end was near, but not here. He looked over the battlefield. His troops were being pushed back. The second wave of Varkari firepower was too strong. The humans couldn't hold much longer. Sierra followed his gaze. Her own forces were advancing. Victory was near. Yet the sight brought no pride. Just wait. Just silence. "If I return to my people, they will order another strike," she said. "Worse than this. You won't rise from what comes next." Kale wiped dirt from his face. "Then don't return," he said. "Not yet. Help me stop it. One day of truth could save thousands." Sierra's jaw tightened. Everything in her life had been loyalty, obedience, power. But something in this man's voice made her pause. He had no rank to command her. Yet she listened. A scream from nearby shattered the quiet. A human soldier was pinned under debris, calling out for help. Kyle turned at once and rushed toward the voice. Sierra followed without thinking. They worked together, lifting broken stone and twisted beams. The man beneath was barely breathing. Kyle pulled him out while Sierra covered them from above. Once the soldier was safe, Kyle turned to her. "You didn't have to help," he said. She shrugged. "You didn't have to trust me," she replied. That moment planted something new between them. Not peace, not friendship, but understanding. They weren't just enemies now. They were witnesses to something greater than war. Kale walked back to the defense line. Sierra walked beside him. The soldiers on both sides watched with confusion. No one fired. No one dared. For the first time in this war, two enemies stood side by side under the same sky. Command didn't understand what they were seeing. A human and a Varkari warrior walking through the center of a battlefield without killing each other was not in any manual. Kyle didn't explain. He didn't have time to convince anyone. He just gave orders and expected them to be followed. His troops listened, not because of rank, but because of who he had become. Sierra stayed close. Her people were calling her back. Her communicator blinked with red signals. She shut it off. For now, she had chosen to walk beside her enemy. Together, they inspected the front line. The defense walls were burning. Ammunition was low. Energy cells were failing. And above them, more Varkari ships were moving into position. Kyle turned to her. "You said the next strike will be worse," he said. "Tell me how." "Much worse," Sierra hesitated. "An orbital core burner," she replied. "It's meant to turn cities into craters. There won't be bodies left. Just shadows." Kyle looked at the children being treated in the tents, at the wounded being dragged across the dirt, at the soldiers trying to reload melted weapons. He clenched his fists. "We need to stop that strike," he said. Tell me how. Sierra looked down at her blade. There's a control beacon, deep inside the command ship. If it's destroyed before the signal is complete, the weapon can't fire. Kale nodded. Then we go to the command ship. Sierra raised an eyebrow. It's in orbit, she said. You can't just walk in, Kale smirked. I've died 10 times. I think I've earned a trip to space. They made a plan. Simple. Dangerous. Kyle would take a stolen Varkari shuttle with Sierra as his guide. They would sneak into the flagship and destroy the beacon before the core burner reached firing stage. Ray protested. She grabbed Kale's arm. Sir, this is madness. You could die for good this time. Kale touched the armor over his chest. Then let's make sure it's for something that matters. The launch pad was hidden beneath the city. Ruins. Old tech from the early days of the war. No one thought it would be used again. Kyle and Sierra climbed into the small black ship. Its systems hummed as if waiting for them. As the shuttle lifted off, the humans below saluted. The fires flickered beneath the clouds. The earth looked smaller as they rose. Kyle stared at the stars above and felt a strange calm in his chest. Sierra guided the controls. Her fingers moved fast. She bypassed the Varkari codes and opened a hidden channel. The flagship appeared on the screen, a giant shadow across the stars. Its surface glowed with red lights. This is where you die for real, she said without emotion. Kale stared at the screen. Then I'll make sure it counts. The Varkari flagship loomed like a floating mountain of metal. Its hull stretched across the stars filled with weapons and death. Kyle stared out the window as the shuttle approached. Sierra moved calmly beside him. She knew the access codes. She had served aboard this ship years ago, but now she was returning as a traitor. Her face showed no fear, only purpose. The shuttle passed the outer sensors without alert. Sierra had masked their signal. They drifted into the docking bay like ghosts. When the landing clamps locked into place, Kale stood first. He adjusted his armor and checked his weapon. The metal was cracked, the energy core flickering, but it would last a little longer. He looked over at Sierra and gave a short nod. She drew her sword. We'll be surrounded in minutes, she said. We head straight to the core, no stopping. The hatch opened. The hallway beyond was empty. Silent lights lined the floor. Kyle stepped out first, weapon raised. Sierra followed, her blade glowing faintly with electric light. They moved quickly through the corridor. Doors opened as Sierra passed. She bypassed security using her command codes. But each time she did, the system grew more suspicious. Alarms sounded after the fourth gate. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. A voice in the Varkari tongue echoed through the halls. They were discovered. Kale didn't stop. He moved like a storm, cutting through guards with perfect aim. His armor absorbed plasma fire. His focus never wavered. Sierra fought beside him like a shadow. The deeper they went, the hotter the air became. The ship's energy core was close. So was the beacon. Kyle could feel a pulse in his chest with each step forward. They reached a sealed door made of thick black alloy. Behind it was the beacon. The weapon control. The reason for all this death. Sierra hacked the panel, her hands moving fast. 10 seconds, she whispered. The door hissed open. Inside was a chamber glowing red. The beacon stood in the center, pulsing with bright energy. It was protected by a shield of rotating plasma rings. Kyle stepped forward. Can we disable it? He asked. Sierra looked at the controls. No, but we can destroy it. Kale raised his weapon and aimed for the base. Before he could fire, a blast struck him from behind. His body flew across the room and slammed into the wall. Sierra spun and blocked the second blast with her sword. A tall Varkari officer entered the room. His armor was golden. His eyes burned with fury. He looked straight at her. You betrayed us, he growled. She raised her sword. No, I chose to save what you wanted to destroy. They clashed, blades screaming against metal. Sparks flew. The officer was strong, skilled. But Sierra was faster, smarter. She twisted, ducked, and struck his leg. Kale pushed himself to his feet. Blood ran from his mouth, his body screamed with pain, but his arms still moved. He lifted the weapon and aimed again. He fired once. The beacon shattered in a burst of white light. The beacon exploded with a pulse that knocked out every light in the chamber. The glowing plasma rings shattered mid-spin and fell like glass rain. The golden armored officer screamed as the light consumed him. Sierra turned just in time to catch Kyle before he collapsed again. His armor was cracked wide open. His chest plate was smoking. Blood stained the inner plates, but he was breathing. "You did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The strike is canceled. The weapon won't fire." Kyle nodded slowly. "Then the armor can rest." A deep hum echoed through the ship. Without the beacon, the energy systems were destabilizing. The floor shook beneath them. Alarms wailed across the hallways. The ship was beginning to fall apart. Sierra looked at the ceiling. "We need to get out now." Kale tried to stand but faltered. His leg wasn't moving. His armor had locked to protect vital organs. It was preparing to shut down. Sierra bent down and pulled his arm over her shoulder. They moved together through the collapsing halls. Fires broke out on the walls. Pipes burst. Sparks flew overhead. But she didn't stop. Not until they reached the launch bay, a small escape. Pod remained, meant for officers, not for traitors and broken soldiers. Sierra didn't care. She shoved Kale inside and sealed the hatch. She climbed in beside him. The pod launched just as the ship's core ruptured. From space, the flagship split in half and exploded into a ring of fire and metal. The pod drifted through the stars, silent and cold. Inside, Kale lay unconscious. His pulse was weak, his face pale. Sierra held onto his hand as the stars reflected off the glass above them. They didn't speak for a long time. The pod moved slowly toward Earth's upper orbit. Emergency lights flickered. A faint beacon blinked green on the dash. A human rescue ship had received the signal. Kyle opened his eyes as the Earth came into view. His voice was rough. "Did we stop it?" he asked. Sierra nodded. "Yes, you stopped the war." Kale let his head fall back. "Then maybe now, it will let me go." She looked at him. "Let you go?" He placed his hand on the armor's chest plate. The light inside it had faded. For the first time, it wasn't glowing. It wasn't humming. It was still. "I don't feel it anymore," he said. "Like it knows its job is done." Sierra stared out the window. "You were never just a soldier. You were a message." Kyle gave a faint smile. "So were you." The rescue ship docked minutes later. Medics rushed in and pulled them both from the pod. Kyle was taken to a treatment bay. Sierra was kept under guard, but no one harmed her. She had arrived with him. Weeks passed. The Varkari High Command fell into silence. Without the beacon and without their golden officer, they lost control. The remaining forces surrendered across multiple fronts. Kale woke up in a white room. His body was healing. The armor was gone, removed piece by piece. Scientists were studying it, but none could make it work again. Sierra stood at his door. She didn't wear her armor anymore, just a simple gray suit. She entered quietly and sat beside him. Her eyes studied him, just like the first time. Then she whispered, "You died 10 times by my blade. So tell me, what kind of armor brings the, dead back?" Kyle looked at her with a calm smile. "The kind that believes there's something still worth saving."